As you're watching this documentary, the first thing we'd like to say is thank you. This project has been our passion, and we made it with no budget. This will go through the recent history documenting the rise of the podcast. We'll start at the very beginning, way back in the 1980s, when podcasting first started. But back then, it was called audio blogging. This is well before the advent of the World Wide Web. In the 1980s, RCS, or Radio Computing Services, provided music and talk-related software in a digital format. And in the early 1990s, we now started to have radio-style talk shows, but on the computer. And in 1993, Carl Malleman launched Internet Talk Radio, which was the first computer talk radio show, each week interviewing a computer expert. It was described as audio files that computer users fetched one by one. We have to say, what a super snappy name that is. Now, downloading music did not reach critical mass until the launch of Napster, and this helped the mass media get used to the idea of downloading what we want, when we want it. In 2001, Alpian Technologies of San Francisco introduced Replay Radio, later renamed Replay AV. This was like a TiVo recorder, but for internet radio shows. The best feature was a direct download link, which would scan the radio publisher's sites for new files and copy them directly to the user's hard disk. The first radio show to publish in this format was Web Talk Guy's World Radio Show, produced by Rob and Dana Greenlee. Web Talk Guy's World Radio, produced by Rob and Dana Greenlee, was one of the first podcasts ever produced. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
I'm sorry, no.
No, we've never heard of it, sorry.
No, I haven't. No. This was actually the first time I'd heard of this.
No,
not once. No. Just then I heard it.
I'm sorry.
Have we ruined your documentary already?
I feel like we ought to have. That's on us.
Our bad.
Okay, let's move on and focus on the podcasters then. When was your first recording session?
Our first recorded session was
probably June or July 2014, I think.
Podbean.com went online for our first customers in 2007, and we created Podbean.com specifically as a podcasting hosting site, so it was always planned to be for that. And we specifically were trying to create a more friendly point-and-click type environment similar to what was out there for bloggers for podcasters.
2012?
4 years ago?
Yes, and it was just...
roughly maybe end of December 2011, beginning of January 2012, somewhere around that sort of time.
My first session, recorded session, was January 2013.
Mine was April.
How do you know this?
What year was it? Because it was right after MGC.
2012 or 13.
It was, probably 2 or 3 years ago, wasn't it?
3 years ago. Yeah.
I first started podcasting back in 2013, in January of that year.
It was on 16th of August 2008 was when the first one went up, so you can assume a few days before that. And
Graham Dunn and I, he's a friend of mine who did the website, we basically decided to do 5 podcasts on one page.
My ex-girlfriend at the time, she actually had an electronic dictaphone. So what I would do...
So we launched Excellence Expected on International Podcast Day in September 2014. And we had stacked up about 20 to 25 episodes at that point.
I cut each segment up into 3 sections or 4 sections, whatever it was. And then
when I launched my very first podcast, but I didn't do it properly at all. It was just such a bad job. I didn't even list it on iTunes. I mean, it was just bad on so many levels.
Recorded, and then I spoke.
I was on 360 Nation, which was an Xbox-focused podcast.
Starting to see a trend here.
Yeah, and I had done that for about a year.
It was actually me and a good friend of mine, Darren, who pushed me into doing the blog.
And why did you start a podcast?
I wanted to start a podcast because I always wanted to be in radio, because I realised one of my only marketable skills is that...
That's a really good question. I think the main reason that I wanted to start a podcast was...
I did it because I got asked to.
And look at you now.
Look at me now. Everyone's favourite.
Just to kind of help people. People ask me questions all the time and I always give the same kind of answers, and I thought to myself, well, look, there's probably something that I can do to help other people out there, I guess on a wider basis.
Me?
My first co-host, Jared, messaged me and he said basically there's a lot of Xbox podcasts.
I thought it would be interesting to try, and I found somebody on VGEvo, the
It's a dating site.
Yeah, said he was looking for a co-host for a podcast, and I said, yeah, me.
I thought it'd be a cool idea to be able to try to maybe edit some audio, so that's how it started. And then
far more natural and entertaining way of putting across opinions, because obviously when you've got two people in the discussion, you've got something to bounce off, and it was a good way of sharing these natural discussions, and it was also, I thought, a really good way to start getting content other than just my writing.
As I was running a community radio station, and I didn't like the restrictions it had, because anyone who's worked in a community radio station, it's limited in its scope. You're only really talking to a local audience, a regional audience is what I'm looking for to say.
So was it really almost by accident, wasn't it? I think it was down to you guys starting up Sports Radio Birmingham, and then doing Speedway show, and then doing a football show, and then when I got sacked from the football, then you and I decided to do our music project, and it's just developed.
So because it didn't interest me, I was like, well, I'm gonna do stuff that I like and do it myself and not have someone have a say in it. Now, obviously, the downside is you're not going to get paid for it, and it's going to take some time for that to happen.
I don't really know why I wanted to start a podcast. I'll just download some gaming podcasts, so...
I decided to launch a podcast for my head trash show business because I felt it was going to be a really, really powerful way for me to communicate directly with the people that I wanted to speak to. Some of the concepts that I discuss or that are part of my business, which is all about getting rid of all those negative thoughts, feelings and emotions from your mind. I mean, some of that stuff is quite delicate. It's also quite meaty subjects that really covering in a blog post doesn't really do it justice. So for me, the medium of the podcast just seemed perfect for me to kind of build that really strong connection with my audience and my target audience as well.
Yeah. It all started off listening to the Giant Bombcast and just wanting to be like a part of a team and see how we could do, and I think it's gone not too badly. So that's basically the simple reason why I wanted to do a podcast.
When did you feel you were comfortable on the microphone?
I think I first started getting comfortable on the mic in the beginning of the Head Trash Show podcast.
I've always felt comfortable.
Yeah, I've always felt pretty comfortable.
To be honest, you see, I see my microphone as my friend.
Yeah, because I haven't got many.
So I'd already, maybe sort of in the 5th episode or so. So I'd already done 12 episodes of my first podcast, and I'd already done another 5 or so in the Head Trash Show. And that's when I really started to find my confidence, find my voice.
It's going to sound really strange to say, but I think no one ever really gets fully comfortable being on a microphone. And that's going to sound bizarre to some people.
Feeling comfortable on the mic was never really an issue for me. From partly this is because obviously I was doing it from another country and just had my headphone on, and that was about the extent of my kind of interaction with it. I just strapped that on, and then I was talking to my co-host Darren, so I was talking to a friend for long periods of time, and that, I suppose, that set me up well for later podcasts when I've done talking to other people.
I've always been comfortable on mic. Like I said, I interned at a radio station even when I was in 8th grade, doing voices and stuff.
I never worry about what I'm going to say because I think about it a great deal before I say something, and I know, because of the person I am, I'm not really going to say anything overly controversial that I'm ever going to regret saying.
The only thing that really ever became an issue in that equation, of course, with Darren, and less so with Darren because I did know him so well, I'm very familiar with his pauses, with his breaks. It was far more of a problem when I started like bringing other people onto the show, because the nature of the pauses.
It took a good solid year before I'd feel comfortable actually on the microphone. Going back to some of the earlier podcasts that we've done, they're just bad. They really are just bad.
Straight off the bat.
Yeah, pretty much instantly.
All the time, just straight away. Hearing my voice was like hearing angels sing.
I had like a weird moment, like listening back to podcasts. At first, I was like, I'm in this. This is kind of weird. But actually recording it was fine.
Yeah, that took longer to get used to than actually talking, listening back to yourself. But at this point, I'm like, that sounds good.
I went about 18 months without listening to a single episode.
Really?
Yep.
My problem is I need to listen back to it, and when I listen back to it during the week, then I get better each week. I haven't listened back to it in a long time, so things have been going down.
Well, because I don't edit your ums out anymore,
Yeah,
so that just took too long.
Yeah.
I think from about episode 10, episode 11, I became quite comfortable interviewing people, because it's just conversation, you know, so who knows.
Why do you enjoy creating podcasts?
It all comes down to, I enjoy editing stuff, like videos or audio, anything like that. I do enjoy it. It takes a lot of time to do, but I do enjoy doing all that. So yeah, I enjoy every part of doing the podcast, to be honest. Really good fun.
Well, it's easy for you. You just show up and fart into the mic for 4 hours a week.
It's nice.
Asshole.
No, there's more to it than that. There's a lot more to it than that. I do enjoy it, actually, or I wouldn't keep doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got 2 small kids. There's no way I'd keep doing it if I wasn't having fun. And it's different now because I have a new job, but with my old job, this was the one break I had.
It was the escape.
The escape, yeah. It was from a grinding week of work. This was the one bright spot where I could just have fun and not worry about anything and be much more creative.
I enjoy creating podcasts because it's different. I've done radio shows in the past, and obviously they have their own restrictions, and I hate doing conventional interviews, and I know I might get some stick for that, but I just don't like doing generic questions, and I understand why people get frustrated with them when they get interviewed. And I've done conventional interviews, like being interviewed for conventional interviews, and I don't like not having a thought process when I'm thinking about stuff, because I can come up with different variations of the same answer and make it sound interesting.
I've always said since day one, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it anymore. If it just becomes a grinder, if it's too hard, or if it just doesn't make any sense to do it anymore, I quit. And like we said, 400 some episodes and we're still going, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's fun.
600 to go.
Well, so the first thing that how I really got into stuff was in 1994. I did a programme called Inside Story, which was on after the European Cup final.
Available on YouTube.
Yeah, and it was about Karen Brady, called The Manageress. Now, I remember being in the studios at the BBC in London, and I promise you, I was close to tears. I was almost crying, because it was the first time I'd seen myself and my voice on television as a playback, and I wanted to get under the chair and hide. But I still get like that with my voice, because I don't really like my voice. No. I don't really like my face, but there ain't a lot I can do about it. But I absolutely love the music and what we're creating. And
I think the reason that I enjoy creating podcasts so much is just the fact that you've kind of got your own freedom. It's not anyone else telling you what you can or can't do. It's your platform, it's your show. You can do exactly what you believe your audience wants, and you can listen to that audience, and they can tell you and they can talk to you, so you can really start to tailor things. I think that's the real benefit of the medium, is you can just do what you enjoy doing, and that's why I think everyone enjoys creating them so much.
I've always enjoyed talking, and I guess that's kind of goes with the territory. I mean, I've always felt comfortable doing it, and by extension, I've always enjoyed that part of the podcasting. Where things always get a little bit tricky is if you feel that something needs editing. I remember painstakingly going over the first 15 or 16 episodes I ever recorded.
No, but like it's awesome to come in and create something and then to kind of see it edited and all pretty and presented for other people to look at.
That's how I like my podcast. I like looking at the audio and being like, good.
Don't listen, I'm just like, yeah.
Spikes are like good.
That's
good.
talking. I
like peaks and valleys. That's
well, it's pretty good because like our podcast is founded on like we were friends first who started a podcast rather than just like like-minded individuals that just happened to run into each other.
What is the worst thing you've ever recorded?
Mark Cerny's running the Guardian Project.
You didn't say that.
Well, we speculated.
Yeah, we speculated.
Only real thing that came up that I wanted to get rid of was there was a joke in the first show about, we were talking about stunts in films, and Robbie, my friend who was the first one on the show, made this joke that like it was they were using terminally ill people and that was actually happening for real when they decapitated people in films and stuff, and I remember sort of laughing like, oh my god, that's awful. But it was all a joke, and it was all we joked about it for a pretty big segment in the podcast.
I've never had an experience where I've gone to a podcast and the interviewers had no idea who I am. I think again that's the importance of preparation, is that they know who you are, you know who they are, you know what the topic's going to be. It's beneficial for everyone involved really. If you're just going into it and your interviewer doesn't know what kind of questions to ask, or they're reading from a default script and you're not expecting the kind of questions they're going to ask.
Biggest thing that I've ever found problems with is where you and somebody are going somewhere with something, and or just you are going somewhere with a topic, and the person you're podcasting with just doesn't come on that journey with you, and suddenly it just gets all awkward and kind of like silent.
I'm not sure I've ever said anything that's too bad on air and left it in, certainly. I think in the early days, I used to be really conscious about fluffing my lines, so I'd edit everything right down.
If you want to hear some crazy stuff, listen to The Break. That's why I cut it out. Just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not like hateful people, and
I honestly, I can't think of anything.
Well, I mean, but people get mad at us because
they do. Yeah.
One thing you have to learn about a podcast, especially even a website or whatever, especially if you get a decent amount of listeners and followers, etc., you're not going to please everybody. And you can say something completely innocuous, and you're going to get an email about it, like, I don't like that. Ah!
I got one.
What'd you get now?
Which just happened.
Oh, yeah.
Where I was talking about how I hate the Rangers. Fuck the Rangers.
Now, I can't really remember anything really bad actually putting up on the podcast, because we record everything and then I get all the audio and then I actually edit it all down.
Incest is better than rape.
Also, again, losing Jackson's cousins is okay.
I have a lot of controversial opinions.
I don't know if you're going to bleep swearing, but I've definitely called people cunts that have probably listened to it. Sorry, guys.
On the awfulness scale.
We had one of our members who isn't here reveal that her mum had thrush for ages.
I don't even remember that. That's awesome.
Straight off the bat in a Valentine's Day episode, I'm pretty sure. Good times.
Hey, listeners, my mom has thrush.
That's
moving on.
That's pretty much how it happens.
What has changed with the equipment since you started podcasting?
Well, to be honest, because we're such a low-budget operation, the equipment hasn't really changed that much since we've been doing it in the 2 years.
I think the growth in podcasting has improved mainly because of the growth in technology and connectivity. So smart devices, smartphones, iPods, being able to access podcasts on a device that's in your pocket at all times, stream that audio through the technology into your car or into like a Bluetooth device. That's been a major development, especially for myself personally. The hassle of having to take your iPod out of your car, plug it in by a USB cable, download it through some software, as opposed to just pressing a button on your phone or your iPhone. Next podcast, bang, downloading over Wi-Fi, no wires, sit in your car, it connects Bluetooth, and it plays through there. So I think connectivity and technology are the two big things that have helped grow podcasting.
You might not get this from what I'm doing right now. Currently I'm sat in my room in the UK, and I don't live in the UK anymore, because what actually ended up happening was I got the request to do this part of the documentary, to contribute to this documentary, I got it through a month or so ago, and I was like, right, one day I set aside a chunk of time and I recorded it all, did it all really nicely on, and this does play into it, I just got a nice Blue Yeti microphone. Previously I'd just been using a cheap Logitech headset, and I moved on to the Untitled Beech PX21 headset, and like the quality goes up at each stage in that equation. But right now I'm recording this on a DSLR with a built-in microphone, because it never dawned on me that a podcast documentary would be done in video form, which I know is just, it's me assuming, and why wouldn't it be on video? I mean, it's just as easy to capture. But I guess I figured if you're doing something about audio, the result would be in audio, but it's not. So generally I now actually podcast with the PX21s I mentioned on my head and the Blue Yeti in front of me, which is a fantastic quality mic.
To be honest, I can't see any difference between that one and the old headset. It's just that now, when we're doing like Google Hangouts, it looks better without wearing the headset. So I use the Blue microphone quite a bit now.
Well, the quick change slightly as to when we first started. We had like me and the Speedway.
GA.
We had a little tiny mic, and we were all shouting round it.
Were you really?
Yeah.
No,
It's
really
so it's changed a little bit. Yeah.
We just sit around the table now shouting round it, don't we?
Yeah, there's definitely been an equipment change happening because of the resurgence of technology that everyone knows about.
It hasn't.
Yeah, we pretty much use the same thing we started with.
Mm-hmm.
We got a new desk. That's about it.
Yeah, looks all right.
It's pretty good.
But what's beneficial about that is it has less of an influence than it used to. I mean, if you wanted to do podcasting or anything like that a while ago, let's say 10, 15 years ago, it would have cost 10 times as much as it did now, which is why you've got no real excuse for wanting to do podcasting, because it's the cheapest it's ever been, or not just podcasting, anything.
You probably can't really see it because you're focused on us, but
still,
take our word for it.
There
is
a desk.
It's a good one. It's okay.
SOCOM mic?
Yeah, my first co-host, the first couple of episodes, he used the USB mic that came with SOCOM 2, I think it was, or SOCOM.
SOCOM 2, I think was the one.
And I called him up one day and said, you need to get a better mic or we're not doing this anymore. That was terrible. You were using, what were you using for a while?
I was using, I don't even remember the brand. It was a cheap headset that had a little microphone that slid down.
Right, and you could hear it creaking constantly.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're not getting paid for this, so
no.
I didn't have the money. It was just a cheap headset microphone that worked.
Well, to be honest, I've not been in the industry too long, so I've not seen too much equipment change. What I have seen is, because more and more people are wanting to get into podcasting, manufacturers are making things much, much easier. So obviously you've got USB microphones and so on and so forth that keeps the hardware costs right down. But we're starting to see now microphones that have got completely integrated mixing desks, and you've kind of got everything you need just from one USB input, which I think is fantastic. So I've not seen too much change, but I'm sure things are just going to get easier for people.
I own 9 microphones. 9. I finally got rid of one. I went on this tear and I found this old Shure, I think it was an SM53 from the 50s. And I bought that and I had to get a special cable made for it because it didn't even use XLR. XLR didn't exist yet. So I had to get this cable made and everything. And I loved it because it had kind of this really weird old sound to it, but I was having problems with the mixer and it just didn't like playing with the mixer at all. So I ended up not using it and it was just sitting there. So I sold it to somebody. But I use now, when I'm at home, I have the Elvis mic, which is the SM58. It's an SM58, but it looks like the Elvis, all the chrome and everything. When I'm on the road, I use a Zoom recorder, one of the little personal recorders. I use the Zoom, I plug it into my laptop on the line in, and I let the audio go through to the software we use, and I use the Behringer mic with that, so yeah.
Do you think it's a better medium for content creators than, say, YouTube or Patreon?
It's a great question in regards to, is there a better medium for YouTube? Because YouTube kind of, I think, shoots itself in the foot. Obviously, if we solely discuss podcasting, then the great avenue podcast has for content creators is that you're in 100% control of the content. So What I mean by that is that anyone who creates a podcast has 100% control of what comes out of it. So I can't turn around and say, for example, that I can't blame anybody else for what content I produce, because I'm in 100% control and I have final say on everything, right down to sponsorship and how the podcast is structured and where it's put, everything. So that is a huge advantage for the content creator, because they 100% own what they do.
I don't know how well the Patreon model works. I've not really seen or done much to it. Now YouTube, I do like the idea of YouTube, but I just think, as you can probably tell, I don't have the face for TV. And a lot of people might think that I don't actually have the voice for radio either, because I'm from Yorkshire and my accent is quite hard to understand. But I prefer the podcast. I think that as a medium is really good.
But obviously the flip side of that is that it's incredibly difficult to get people to care enough about it to generate money, to give you money to be able to cover the content you're doing without, because, usually if you have a company and you want someone to invest in it, you'll give a percentage of your company away, and in this case, percentage of your content away. That is much more difficult to do in a podcast sense.
Now Patreon, it's a little bit different, because I think it's, you have ideas and then people, if they like the ideas, will pay towards your ideas.
I can't wrap my brain around how a lot of the people on YouTube get paid. It's fascinating to me, because I think we put a lot more work into what we do. There are some YouTube channels out there that they really put a lot of production time in.
Yeah, but I think it's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
With a podcast and YouTube, they're very different things.
We've always shied away from asking for money, because at first it's our hobby, we should pay for it. But we've been lucky. We've got the affiliate links set up, and everybody wins.
Yeah.
We're not asking for money. You're already going to go to the store and spend money.
The only time we asked for money, we said, if you're going to spend money,
do it there.
With our name, is to do it during Extra Life.
Yeah. Yes.
Where we do the charity event.
And that's the other reson we don't have a Patreon or whatever, is because the one time we ask for money a year is Extra Life.
Yeah, and we'd rather see the money there than just coming straight to us. But
I mean, we're doing okay. I mean, we have, again, we're here at E3. We have 6 guys here. We were able to pay for the hotel rooms for everybody. But we could use more. We like money. We have a little.
We can't quit our jobs.
We have. It's up in a jar on top of the fridge.
That
I'd like
would be
more.
the best thing, yeah. And that was always the dream. If we could quit our jobs and do this full time, that would be amazing.
Podcasts for me are just a really good way of having information, because the people on the other end know that you're not getting any other information. So I will quite often, while I will quite often just listen to videos, podcasts are obviously the best option there, because they cover everything, all the other information that you might miss. It's a very different thing though to people who are streaming, YouTube, all of the other options out there, because they do provide visual. And obviously, I mean, I cover a lot of gaming, and the visuals can be incredibly important to that. Let's plays, live streaming the first however many minutes of game. If that's what you're looking for, you need the visual. But it's not necessarily something that I focus on, and I think they're equally good, but for very different reasons. And for me, podcasts are the best, but for people who perhaps want to see what a game looks like, rather than like I am now in a place where I will buy any game that I feel I'm interested in, because that gives me a chance to talk about it, and if I've watched a load of stuff about it at some point, that muddies my opinion. So I think I'm in a place where podcasts are probably my favourite form of media, of getting my information, but I think for a lot of people that's not the case.
Yeah, I think the internet, in my opinion, the internet is the most creative piece of, it's not actually an equipment, but it's a tool, isn't it? And there are a lot of tools, aren't it? I mean, we're a pair of tools. But I do think it allows creativity without suppression, and I think that that's vital, because in this world, we're all controlled, PR companies, spin doctors, full of bullshit, really, and I think that the internet allows creativity.
I wouldn't say that it's better than YouTube or Patreon for content creators, because I really think it depends on the content creator and what they're comfortable with. For me, it's really easy to podcast because I know all I have to do is press record. I've got 2 little kids and sometimes I don't get much sleep. So the idea of having to put makeup on, do a video, make sure my background's all ready and okay and the house is tidy is just too much of an effort. Whereas for me, hitting record, the house could be chaotic behind me. I've even recorded podcasts with my little 12-month-old. She was in a sling and I just kept her quiet, sleeping while I was recording the podcast, interviewing some guests. And I just wouldn't be able to do that with YouTube. So for me, it works really, really well for those reasons.
Well, I think YouTube and Patreon they've got a place in the mix for people. And I don't think it's a case of a medium being better than another medium. I think it's just really where your audience are and what you enjoy doing. So for example, I'm really sort of nervous about the amount of work that it might take to put videos together every week, especially twice a week, because we publish twice a week. So I kind of stay away from YouTube. But having said that, I know people that do really, really well with YouTube, and their viewers, their listeners really, really love it. So I don't think it's a case of generally being better. I think it's just what you can manage, because the last thing you want to do is start down a path on, for example, YouTube and just not be able to maintain it. So I think it's about finding the right mix for you. And if it's a podcast, fantastic. If you can do a podcast and YouTube, even better. But don't be shy, don't be nervous about not doing either. Just do what suits you. I think that's the key thing.
We use Patreon as well and YouTube, so hard to say. We're more famous for our podcasts than we are for our YouTube, but hey, fingers crossed that changes.
Pretty much. I think YouTube is better in terms of gearing money towards the content creators. There really is no sort of YouTube equivalent for podcasts. I mean, it's all free, and there's no way of sort of putting ads at the top or tail of it unless you do it yourself, whereas YouTube has that there. So that's better in terms of monetization.
I feel like if you wanna like truly kind of like spread your success or spread whatever you're trying to create, you kind of have to go across all 3 platforms in one way or another. Otherwise, you're, putting all your eggs in one basket, as it were.
Yeah, we would be very poor and probably homeless if we just did podcasts.
For people just starting out, what advice would you give?
Don't do it. Don't.
Seriously. No. Have fun with it. Really, because if it's not fun, why are you doing it?
2 bits of advice. One, you don't really need anything when you're starting up. You need something. You need a computer to record it on, Audacity, which is free, and a cheap mic. I mean, you talk about £10-15 for a decent mic.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you always hear people like, I want to do a podcast, and then you ask them, what do you want to do about it? I don't know. You got to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And you have to have a plan of attack. If you're just going to get on the mic and just blabber on and on, it may be fun to listen to if you're kind of touched in the head, but if you're just going to sit there and talk, I don't think it's. But if you're being satisfied, I guess, if you're gaining some satisfaction from doing that, that's all that really matters. I mean,
yeah.
The other thing that I'd say is, as with my kind of guideline for everything that I put online, generally, is that it needs to be something that you would be happy to yell across a room of people that you don't really know. I'm not a huge fan of doing things for shock value. It has its place sometimes, generally in comedy. If you're doing something in a kind of serious way, do consider what you're saying. Do remember that anybody could hear this ever.
Stick with it.
Hassle your friends. That's how we became famous.
True.
Famous.
In air quotes.
Well, you contacted us, so I'm standing by it. Famous.
Stick with it. Start it. There's a lot of people that I want to do a podcast, but I don't know what to do. Just start recording, start talking. And even if you don't air whatever it is that you record, at least you'll have it there. And you only get better.
As long as you're putting out interesting quality material that you would be interested in, people will come to that. It'll build a pace. My first podcast started off quite slow, started off quite quietly, and then it built an audience as we got better at doing it, and got poured more and more effort in. It's a shame we couldn't continue that, actually, because we were starting to get good viewing figures near the end.
Also, yeah, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because if you don't, nobody's going to find you. Like, end of the day, you have to let people know you're there.
Yeah, you're always going to miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Exactly.
Well, I think there's a lot of advice out there for people, and I think, one of the biggest things that people are going to hear is, don't worry about being perfect, just start, just get something going. I think if you listen to certainly my own episode 1, wow, it's terrible. I'm really robotic, it's really kind of droney, it's really kind of dull, if you like. And I think you don't need to worry about that. That's the thing that I would say to anyone wanting to start out, is just start doing it and don't be nervous about how bad you feel you are.
The first time I went on to BBC Radio WM with Malcolm Boyden, I said to Malcolm, what do you want me to do? And he said, I don't know. And just be yourself, and that's all I've ever done with anything that I've ever did. Anything I've ever done, I don't know what I'm doing. A frog in my throat. I need a glass of water.
I would suggest just get a couple of your mates and set up your own podcast. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with Podbean and Libsyn, all these other sort of places where you can actually set up. And even Podbean, they've got like a free service, so you can actually do a podcast like once a week, once a month, and actually do that as a practice, get it up online, try and get a bit of a following, and hopefully things take off for you.
If somebody asked me about podcasting now, they're thinking of starting out, the one thing I would really urge them to do is to really be clear about how podcasting is going to fit in with what they're doing with their life. And if it's part of their business, to be really clear about how it's going to add value to their business and what role it's playing within their business. Because podcasting takes a ton of time. There's a lot of effort. There's a lot of preparing that goes into episodes. And that's whether or not that, if you have guests, then you've got to research the guests, put time in, organise the recording, then edit the guest, listen to what's been said. There's, to write up your show notes, there's the writing up of blog posts and show notes. And if you create downloads that go with your episodes as well, then there's the time required to create those. Then there's all the sort of marketing of each episode, so the social media sharing. And so there's a lot of effort that goes into each podcast episode.
If you're feeling unsure about doing something, go and do it. Go and do it regardless of what other people say. If you think about anyone that ends up on the front of magazines, they're on the front of the magazine because they've just not let people deter them from pursuing their goal and their dream.
Why do you think they've become so popular?
Yeah, it's a combination of it's free and it can be as niche as you want it to be, and generally the hosts are pretty genuine, and again, they're not trying to censor themselves too much.
Or sell you anything, or keep their jobs because it's all on them.
Yeah.
At this point, podcasts are frequent enough that you actually start to build a relationship with the people on there, providing they're good and they put themselves across in a very natural way.
I think in podcasting there's room for everyone. I think that's one of the advantages to the medium, that smaller companies and individuals can get started. And yes, big companies certainly have an advantage. They can create multiple podcasts. They have budgets.
It's an easy way to get entertainment, and you can have it at your own pace.
Yeah, and
especially with the explosion of iPods and things like that, and you're in the car, people are in the car for long commutes, and radio tends to be a lot of the same music over and over again. This is something different.
Well, I think it's just
and it's
also
focused.
Yeah, I think talk radio has always been a big thing, but it's always been very limited genres.
Yeah.
Whereas now you have all these podcasts out there that they're going to cover something you enjoy, I guarantee you.
Unlike Netflix and various other visual mediums, podcasts are passive. You can work, you can train at the gym, you can walk your dog, you can be driving, and you can be consuming the content that interests you at a time where typically you will be doing something else, so you don't have time to watch a video whilst you're walking the dog. So I think that's why they've become so popular. One, they're on demand, you can choose what you listen to, but more so, they're passive. You can actually get involved wherever suits you doing an activity that you wouldn't normally be able to consume that kind of content in. So, and I think that will only grow and grow and grow. I think it's a fantastic medium for anything.
I think podcasts have become so popular because of the smartphone. I mean, I listen to podcasts all the time, and I've always got my phone in my back pocket with a podcast playing when I'm going around the house, getting breakfast ready, getting lunch ready, hanging the washing, cooking. I love listening to podcasts while I'm cooking. When I used to go at the gym, I used to be listening to podcasts all the time at the gym. I've got them in the car. They literally accompany me wherever I go. And I think that's what people find. That's what they love about them. The fact that they can choose what they're going to listen to and when they're going to listen to it. And it's always with them.
I've always found this interesting, this point I make, that no one ever really listens to radio shows anymore to listen to the presenters. It's about the station and what music they play. So the music really is the overriding factor in a lot of radio stations these days. Whereas in podcasting, it's so personal, and it's so, my podcast has me embedded in all of it. It's my personality, it's my music, it's, the guests, the people I like, and that's the thing, is that it's a byproduct of the person that's hosting.
What has been your favorite topic that you've covered so far?
I only really cover games.
Oh God.
Music. I just love music.
Yeah,
Janina Gavankar.
Travel-related podcasts, food podcasts, and also things about culture, current events, just about anything where I can learn from it or just enjoy some of my special interests.
Mental health, because because I'm not afraid of talking about my own mental health troubles.
Anything about Jurassic Park is always funny as well.
Magic, guys.
Magic is solid. Space is good. The moon is great.
They're solid episodes, but they're not great topics. Like, what's a good
good topic?
The moon, I guess, is pretty good.
The moon's all right. That's because they shut up the second topics are so general. It's like, what's a good thing? What's a good just basic thing?
Moon is a good thing.
Yeah, dogs was funny.
What's the worst topic you've ever talked about?
Football.
Probably football.
Football, because whatever you say in football, I used to have in my black cab, because I was a former black cab of Birmingham, I used to have on a blue background, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing, and I think that's it with football. People just take it too seriously.
I don't think we've run into anything that...
I guess the worst topic that we kind of snatched out of the air ever, that kind of failed, that I felt should have succeeded, was a discussion we were having about video games that have been turned into movies, or that way around. That's right.
I think the worst thing, just overall, is when people come into our community and try to rustle things up and create waves and be an a-hole instead of being a contributing member of the community. That gets on my nerves, but topic?
I'll say what gets to me, what bothers me, is when people, they take what I've said the wrong way.
Yeah.
Or they don't understand what I meant when I said it.
Yeah.
To date, I've never had a bad experience in a podcast. I think the level of preparation I tend to do helps prevent that. I think anytime you're going in to have a bad situation is when you're caught off guard. So any preparation you can do in advance, get the questions in advance, prepare as many answers you can in advance. Obviously you don't want it to be scripted, but you want to know what you're talking about and you're not saying and scrabbling around for answers. So that's hopefully helped me today and will continue to.
Don't really think there's been a worse topic we've ever covered. Like I say, there's stuff come up that's been controversial, but I wouldn't say there's ever been a topic where I've went, this is rubbish. I mean, obviously there's been certain situations in conversations where I've went, this is ridiculous and why are we talking about this, but very little.
The Weasleys being...
well, if you ask our fans, that was the worst topic.
Yeah,
they were like...
No, they loved that one.
It's popular, but they
had a lot of problems. Which?
Jamie Maddox.
Oh, right.
Well,
yeah,
that's
they
our
don't
least
love that
popular
one.
episode.
Yeah, the Jamie Maddox, the multiple man one. They're not a fan.
Niche-ish.
It's another topic.
We've done a lot of Animal Kingdoms. For shut up a second, like at least 5. So I'm sure one of them was not up to snuff.
As for like actual topics where we probably shouldn't have gone with it, we did sex pretty early on, and that seems way too obvious now. And in the result, the episode is fine, but it's not that funny. It's mostly just like sex.
Lol. Our first ever shut up a second was puberty, which I feel like I would never want to do again because...
Yeah, listening back to the early stuff is quite just...
It's almost like we wanted to do sort of a serious
Oh wait,
show.
worst topic, come on food.
Oh yeah, in favour of the filter. Come on, food.
Yeah, that had me gagging in the studio.
Ejaculating
it was not a
into
great time.
tomato soup. It was.
I wasn't in that
great.
one, and I'm kind of glad.
Yeah, it was like.
Oh wait, no, I panelled it.
Yeah, you were paneling and having a bad time. Yeah, it was like, wouldn't this be a funny goof? Look at this website. Horrible people. Horrible website.
A nightmare.
Oh, I hated it.
What has been your favorite episode of your podcast so far?
Yes, I was once a guest on the Amateur Traveler podcast, talking about my hometown at the time, the Tampa Bay, Florida area, and it went well. The host, Chris, has been podcasting for a while and done a lot of great episodes, and he has a good structure. I think he has some nice interview questions that he asks, and so everything went smoothly, and I hope it's something that people continue to enjoy and listen to when they're getting ready to go to the Tampa Bay area. That's a podcast that I continue to listen to as he produces it, and it was a pleasure to be on it.
I don't know. About the best podcast I've ever produced, it depends how you ask. For example, if you're asking me personally, I would say, whenever I've talked about mental health, and being open about that, from my experiences and being honest, and I've had great responses from that, which is not the reason I do it, but it's nice to know that, I just mean having people say that it means something to me, telling my story.
From the industry podcasts, I tend to get asked what my favourite games a lot, and I tend to keep that interesting by mixing it up, changing around and going with my favourite, changing the system I'm choosing, or maybe changing the genre, just to keep it interesting for myself really, because I think that's when it becomes less interesting if you're just repeating the same thing over. For the record, I probably would still go with Rollercoaster Tycoon 2 as my all-time favourite.
Oof, that's a question.
I think we just combined these questions in the last ones of the topics.
Yeah, we kind of did.
Best episode, fuck it. Let's just say Space. Shut up a second.
Space is off the chain.
I was in for a time in that episode, and it was good.
Yeah, Space is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
As for Plumbing the Deathstar,
Dr. Doodle episode, I like that one.
Yeah, that was fun, but I wouldn't say it was our best.
Actually, no, the metahuman one.
Metahuman Prison, yeah, that was good. I think it's hard to choose a favorite because all of them have different elements that make them good.
Probably middle of the era when I was doing Doofus. I mean, at that point we had, lordy, we split into, I think we had down to about 40 minutes at the kind of longest. It was broken into 3 or 4 parts, including or not including a couple of special segments. So we'd start and just like a hello, and then what we've been playing with the news, then what we've been playing, and maybe a topic.
I mean, we're biased, really. I think that to describe us, we're just a pair of idiots, and if people like it, brilliant.
I would like to think that maybe I learn a little bit every few weeks and do something different, and
a little bit better every few weeks.
But we don't do a lot of production. I don't do a lot of bumper music, and it's a pretty standard formula that I do.
Yeah.
I do like that. I mean, my little signature has always been putting the comedy clip at the end. Sometimes I double that up, but
it's because of the way our podcast works with our tiny agenda.
It's usually like that, and then that turns into 4 hours.
New release, couple of news items, and then
what we're playing.
What we're playing, review. And that's
Email.
literally what it says.
Yeah.
And then it turns into 4 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
What's the best question you've ever been asked, or you yourself have asked?
Now, I guess there's 2 answers to this question. I haven't done many interviews in my time on camera or on mic, I should say. The biggest one that actually ended up being a video, not a podcast, was when I got to talk to Suda51. It was around the time Killer is Dead came out, and while everybody else was going in there asking about the sexism in the game, which for some reason he still felt compelled to address with me at some point during the interview. What I was really interested in, what I got to ask about, and I think he was quite relieved to not have all the focus on the fact that there were a lot of women in his game that weren't perhaps as well dressed as they should have been, was how he created his mix of Asia and America in his game, his Japan and America fusion, because they are in a very set world, they're in a very specific time and place, but how that world, he arrived at that world, because he's got this very specific view of America that is very unique within all of that kind of series of games. And Killer 7, Killer is Dead, and No More Heroes. All of those are quite beautiful to look at and quite unique, but I basically got to quiz him on how he came to it. And it was very much like how when he's travelled to America, he's only spent kind of limited periods of time there, and obviously when he goes back, it's kind of flavoured with his world. The other questions I got to ask that I always enjoyed were when I was doing the Doofus podcast with Darren, and occasionally he as my co-host would pretend to be Jonathan Frakes, Frakesy as we call him, or alternatively Will Riker from Star Trek The Next Generation. And he'd come on and he would pretend to be Will Riker with this peculiar accent that was not American in any way, and I got to ask him questions. And the one episode, he was currently starring in a reboot of Bigfoot and the Hendersons, a pornographic reboot of Bigfoot and the Hendersons, and he was Bigfoot, and he was talking about how he actually had to shave down for the role because he was just too hairy to be a Bigfoot, and I got to quiz him about that, and that was perhaps my favourite set of questions in interviews, even though...
One of the things I think that makes podcasting really great is the which you haven't touched on, is that the audience participation. It's one of the things I most enjoy about it. Like when we interviewed Ryan Day, for example, who's part of Geek and Sundry's brother to Felicia Day, who runs Geek and Sundry, did the Guild and various other things. When we spoke to him and the Geek and Sundry fans, they had the greatest questions. Same with the Red Dwarf fans who emailed in at that time when Chris Barry and that was on, and it's just, I love the geek community in that regard, and I love people who care about stuff because they ask the most interesting questions. It makes my job.
Joel had that really good one when we were talking to Stig Asmussen, and it was if you were at a dinner table with Kratos, like, what would you say, or something like that? That was awesome, like, because that totally took Stig by surprise, and he just pondered it for so long.
Yeah.
I would say probably the best question I've ever had either came from Janina or from probably David Jaffe, but I don't remember what it would be. Because Jaffe always gets all kind of metaphysical like halfway through the conversation.
Yeah, I know there was one interview where I had something, and when I said it, I said to myself, that was, because I was thinking on my feet, and it just came up, and it flowed in perfect, and I was like, that was that moment. That's that moment I've wanted. I've been striving for it. I'm never gonna get it again. I haven't gotten to get it. I don't even remember what it was at this point.
That one. Right
I'm sure at least 8 people have responded like that, so I'm gonna say, how are you? That's the best question I've ever been asked.
Just in general, Jackson, would you like $1 million? I've never been asked that.
It would be funny if you were asked that and you said no.
I'm good.
What would you replace cats with?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
That's a good question. We've been asked.
Why Jackson asked,
but still.
There was how many? When does a hat become a home?
Yeah, when does a hat become a home?
That's a good question.
Or me again. Yep, I'm good at questions, guys.
If you could replace, that was one I asked. So I guess I was going to like, if you could replace a rocket ship with an alternate form of travel, how would you go to space?
Pretty much any question from Shut Up a Second is pretty good.
But we asked them, so hey.
It's probably not on. I'm going to stick with the $1 million one.
I'm going to stick with how are you?
No, we don't all get asked questions. This is the first question we've ever done, isn't it? I think so, yeah.
What is the worst question you personally have ever been asked?
I've probably asked 1 million terrible questions.
Where did you buy those shoes? That was mean.
Are you tired?
Would you like 1 million punches in the neck? I guess when I'm sort of flustered, if a conversation's not really going anywhere and I feel like I need to fill a gap, I'm sure at some point I've said something like, so, what you been up to? Or I don't know, something very sort of generic that I kind of went, why didn't I say that? But, if you're doing a 2-hour podcast, it's gonna peak and trough, like that's just common sense. So you're gonna end up saying sort of questions like that. So I don't really mind. But yeah, so I don't really know. I can't really think of anything where I've kind of went, ooh, why do you say that? It's a bit controversial.
I think the worst kind of question is generally, why don't you do something about Pokemon where they're dogfighting?
Yeah, it sucks. It's played. We get it.
Or why don't you Hey Joel, why haven't you done an episode on Twilight? Is also a question I hate getting, because Twilight's fine. I'm gonna leave it alone. Stop asking me, please.
It's fine.
I don't know why
people approaching me on the street.
It's weird because
go for a coffee.
Usually,
$2.90. Can you do a question about Twilight, please? Oh my god.
Yeah, because usually with Plumbing the Deathstar requests, we get them through emails, but the Twilight ones always just seem to be
in person.
Personally, no, they're like Twitter and stuff like that, but just directed at me. No.
See, with the memory I have and all the stuff I remember, we got flack for that today about the details that we remembered about an event.
Yeah.
But I don't think about the podcast that way. I mean, the podcasts go by and they just go by. I mean, we remember little things here and there, but I don't remember.
And that's my problem. When I used to listen back to them every week, it would stick in my mind more. But now I just don't have the time, and
it's that radio mentality.
Yeah,
you just get on and do the show,
and it's gone.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I've had people email me and say, when you were talking about this last week, and I'm like, I talked about that last week.
And I even listen to it again because I have to edit it, and sometimes I'm even like, we did?
Yeah.
I think not a question, but when we get stuff sent, like review copy sent to us, and it's an Xbox game and then the label actually says PlayStation Nation on it, and they send us an Xbox game.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Which
I think it's hilarious.
Not entirely cool, but we both have all the Xbox systems, but
yeah, we deal with it.
Yeah.
Usually I email them, I'm like, what do you want me to do this?
Yeah.
Haven't really had one. Again, I tend to be quite comfortable chatting. The only time we've really run into awkward moments, like if it's a group of us talking who are friends and at some point you cross a line that people don't necessarily want to discuss on air, if you're literally just having a laugh around with each other, sometimes you stray across that line naturally, like you would in a bar, say, and you're fine with it, except you don't want to give the answer, and that's when you run into the awkward moment. I don't think I've ever had any interview that I've gone into with people that I'm not familiar with, because I'd always prepare, and I'm not somebody, as I've said before, I'm not somebody who goes in for shock value, so I'm not going to go out there with some question that's completely not going to work. The only time something like that would happen would be if they themselves were not having a good day, and then even then I don't think I necessarily think the question was bad, more the response.
When you have a guest on your show, how do you prepare for an interview?
Well, actually, I think I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to preparation for interviews with guests. And what I mean by that is that I've set up a really strong process. So the guests give me everything that I know. I use a booking platform that allows me to set my availability. When someone books on the show, they give me everything. They give me the biography, they give me a good picture, they give me the 3 actionable tips. Excellence Expected is very much around 3 actionable tips at the end. And the guests give me all of that beforehand. So all I need to do is make sure I'm up to date with what they've sent me, and just really get a grip for those guys, do a little bit of research into what they do, who they are, their background, but it's certainly not too extensive. And I think that's the key thing. If you want to keep a podcast up, if you want to maintain the quality, you have to have a really sound process. And I think if you're going to interview guests, you really need to be strong on that. So I would certainly advocate coming up with something that allows your time to be minimal but high quality, definitely.
All 3 of my podcasts have featured guest interviews alongside the more solo content that I provide. And so I've always had to sort of wrestle with preparing for the guest interview. And it really does depend on the guest as to how I prepare. So some of the guests I've had on, I've known them quite well, or we've developed a relationship over social media that means it's a very relaxed sort of interview, and I've already become quite familiar with a lot of their work through following them or being in the same circles for quite a while. Whereas if there's a new guest where I really don't know anything about them, and maybe they've approached me because they want to come on the podcast, or because I'm researching a topic and I feel that is going to add value to my audience, then I will spend quite a bit of time trying to get my head around who they are. And if they've launched a book or they've created a film, then I'll definitely dive in and read the book and watch the film. I've interviewed quite a lot of film directors on the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast, so I will spend time watching the material that they've created, because I think it's really important to have that perspective when you're speaking to them.
I rarely am interviewing guests. I guess these guys aren't either, though. Really.
Oh, that's true. We have a couple of people on, but generally we don't prepare. It's more, I know, we did a show once, one show where we had a sort of it. A guest came on, he didn't really know what was going on. We didn't really treat it as an interview as such, neither did. And he kind of did.
And that's on us. I think just because of the nature of our show, we can't, if we approach it like an interview or we approach it like an interview, they approach it like an interview, we don't, we end up crossing wires. Yeah. And we're not an interview show at the end of the day.
Exactly.
If we have somebody on who's not part of like the rotating cast, then they're just as a guest host, and they're there for the fun, and they're there to kind of enjoy what we do. And hey, if they end up spruiking something at the end, sick.
Yeah. We're really bad at spruiking stuff. We always forget to ask them to do it.
Yeah, we generally forget to ask them. We generally forget to spruik ourselves. We're just terrible at it.
We just have a good time, and then we're like, yeah, all right. Oh, wait. Oh, it's in the car. It's that drive home.
Yeah. We forgot. Damn it, falls.
Yeah.
To prepare for a podcast, I usually try and get the questions in advance from the interviewer. So I have a general feel from what they're going to be talking about, what topics do they want to specifically cover, if it's work related, are there any specific products they want to talk about, so make sure I'm fully aware on the ins and outs of all those products. So yeah, preparation, write it out in either a piece of paper or in a note, you're on a notepad, and then have that up ready for when the podcast starts, because the great thing about podcasting is you're not on camera, so you can sit with your notes in front of you and read from there if need be. So yeah, preparation really.
Well, we have to. We've got a buffet today.
Hold on. Right, this is how I prepare. We got the Velcro teddy bears coming in. So I just look at bits and pieces and just put jotting like bullet points down. And to be honest, that's our Biscuit Boys show. Yeah. If we done a production meeting, we would just piss about and have a laugh. We done one, ain't we?
Yeah, it didn't work.
And we just mess about.
I mean, obviously, I'll do my research, but the advantage of podcasting with a podcast I've made is that the guests I have on are people I want to have on. So I very often know what they've done already before they've been on. So they're either friends of mine, people I've met who I kind of have a vague idea of what they do, or they're well-known people who, you know, sometimes in some cases don't need any introduction, or at least not the majority of people. So yeah, but I always say to people, especially if you're starting out and trying to figure out what the best way of doing it is, try to find what works for you. So if you feel comfortable talking, doing it in question form and going off a sheet, then by all means start that way.
Well, with interviews, it's different. Different people, you know, you have to prepare differently. I mean, some people that we interview, they're quite well known, so you can just quickly Google and it brings up a whole swath of information about that person.
Prepare?
Hit record?
You can prepare?
It depends. I mean, there have been occasions where I kind of go back and look at Wikipedia or look at articles written about whatever. It depends on the interview, but we really don't do very much. We
don't. I've tried to do a little bit more recently because I want to be a little bit more prepared at times.
Yeah.
I want to have an idea.
I mean, this week's going to be a mess.
Yeah. It's tough because if you're not prepared at all, and you're trying to think on your feet and you're trying to remember things about that person, things about the company they work with, things about the games they've done. It's tough, you know. So,
well, I mean, a good example
on the web. What?
Well, a good example is when at the PlayStation 4 launch, I had an opportunity to interview Hideo Kojima, and I'm like, I don't know what to ask him, and I passed. He's a cool guy. I've talked to him a couple times through his translator, but I didn't know what to ask him. So I just said, yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you do have to do some prep. And I try to. When we know we're having a guest on, I'll try to at least look up the company history and try to figure out some of the games they've done.
Unless it's Stuart. If Stuart's on, we don't care.
Yeah.
Simple process. Find out I know more than enough about them for something that's going to come up during a conversation. Now, obviously, most interviews, you very, very rarely get more than 5-10 minutes, and they're on a kind of a cycle through. I mean, occasionally you do, and occasionally I've been lucky enough to have a longer set of questions answered. But normally that's in written form. If it's something that's going to go on a podcast, unless you get them on the air there and then, as opposed to going out, meeting them, and having it as an insert into the show, you tend to not need to know like their life story. You just need enough to keep the conversation going, and you need to know enough about their history to make sure that you can roll off the answers they give you in natural ways if you have any additional questions.
What topics do you hope to touch on in the near future?
The PlayStation 4 launch, since I live.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything we haven't covered that, like, damn, but it's more that, have we covered that in an episode? If we start talking over lunch or catching up, and it's like, did we cover that?
Oh, yeah,
funny story.
that's the worst.
Shit.
Like, people are talking about, like, the Matrix, and I'm like, that's from a plumbing, I can't bring that up. Never mind.
Like, the whole ninja story, how, again, going back to cancer, like, with the pig giving you cancer, have we covered that to an extent? I just don't know.
I've talked about my pig, and I've talked about cancer, but I don't know if
You made the link.
connections.
Yeah. Also, actually, there is one thing that I guess is actually close to an answer to your question rather than what we've just said. We recorded an episode, so sometimes we record episodes and store them for ages before we release them. We recorded an episode about Friends for Plumbing the Deathstar, and then less than a week later, Cracked released a video that touched on a lot of the same points, so we kind of wish we released that earlier, so then Cracked looked like it was stealing from us.
Yeah, even the same day would have been beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of fucked that one up. Hey, if you've been watching this and we did release a Friends episode, don't worry about that Cracked thing, didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to cover in that I haven't covered yet. One of the things that I wanted to do when I was in community radio, for example, was talking to a scientist, and that's something I'm trying to work on. I've been talking to Newcastle University about getting somebody on because it's a hobby of mine to talk about.
Plenty. I mean, it's such a weird question. I mean, there's no way you find time to cover everything. Sometimes the other people in the room, sometimes the other people on the show just aren't on the same page as you. You don't want to do it by yourself. But I guess if you're looking at like truly missed opportunities, it's when I haven't had the equipment with me to do something in a timely fashion, or I've seen that kind of little possibility. Like I got drunk, sat next to Sweary, who made Deadly Premonition and Izakaya in Tokyo before Tokyo Game Show one year. Or if I could have got a mic on that conversation for 5 minutes, it would have been fantastic, because his broken English and my broken Japanese would have only led to comedy gold. Another time I had half a minute in front of Shinji Mikami of Resident Evil fame, and that is a series that I adore.
No. No, not really. I'm not bothered, because I'm not really bothered. I mean, I'd love to do what I'd love to do. I would love to interview Paul Weller, because Paul Weller's my hero and idol. And I'd love to do something with Paul at the Black Barn Studios.
I wish I could have gone to E3 every single year. I wish I could have gone to MGC every single year.
Yeah.
Midwest Gaming Classic, which is a place where we meet up with a lot of our listeners. That's kind of our community event. It's not our event, but we've kind of adopted it as our community event.
We've latched onto it quite a bit. Or that little fish like swimming behind a shark.
Yeah, one of the things I've been wanting to cover is science, for example, and that was one of the things that community radio was very limiting in, is that it was difficult to get people to come on the show and be allowed to do it, with restrictions and whatnot. And that's something I've wanted to pursue on the podcast, because that's a hobby and passion of mine to read about physics and particle and quantum physics and particles and atoms and the universe and the Big Bang and how the planets were created and all the different spectrums of light and all that stuff really, really fascinates me, and how things work on a molecular level, and how we work as human beings, and and the chemical interaction we have within our bodies and with each other, and all that kind of stuff fascinates me as a layman, and as a layman I want to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about, and try and see how far I can keep up with them, as it were.
Were there any significant low points in your recording thus far?
I think one of the low points for me podcasting was when I just launched my Fear-Free Childbirth podcast, and so now I was running two weekly podcasts with a newborn and a 4-year-old, and it quickly became obvious that this was not sustainable. And so I reached a point where I really had to make a decision that one of them had to be put on hold. And that was really tough for me, because I know from all the emails that I get from my listeners that they love my podcast. And so I had to drop one, and put it on hold. And that was really hard for me to decide which one I would do that with, and how I would handle that with my audience, and how I'd feel about letting them down, because I really don't like letting people down in that way. So that was quite hard for me when I decided to put one of my podcasts on hold.
There wasn't any low points to do with the podcast. The only low points I had were when some of the team, in my opinion, got too big for themselves, and I decided that I just wanted to have a month or two of a break from doing the podcast. And when I came back to the podcast, the guy who was technically running it for a few weeks, he decided that he thought best, and it just wasn't the same. The chemistry just wasn't there. You could just tell in the voices that none of us wanted to be there anymore. So I decided that I'd get some new staff, new blood, and get one of the older staff members who was there, who the other guys didn't really like, but I thought was okay.
The Jared days. When Mark quit, I was really bummed. But it was.
That's an amazing story, though.
Yeah. So Mark, who was my second co-host, is a great friend of mine, and we had a conference call with Sony about PlayStation Home, and we ended up we launched the community theater in PlayStation Home. And this was the initial meeting about all that they were thinking about it.
This back when it was just you and Mark.
It was just myself and Mark, yeah. And I knew Mark was talking to his wife about starting a family, but it didn't really cross my mind. And we got done with the meeting, and Mark says, "You need to call me back, all right?" Or he's like, "We need to talk." So I called him, and he says, "Yeah, I'm quitting." And that's what he said. And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Listen, this is all starting to get big." And he goes, I don't want to be involved with it and then leave. So I'm letting you know I'm quitting. You need to find somebody else, but I'll stick around. And that was like a week before Midwest Gaming Classic.
Yeah, being sacked really. Then I went Solihull Moors. My football club really turning against me. And I remember sitting with the chairman of Solihull Moors, Shipper, one Tuesday night. And I'll be honest, I was close to tears. I didn't know what I was going to do. And that was a nice point for me, being sacked, really. But then, what makes you, gives you strength, doesn't it? Yeah. If it don't kill you. If it kills you, you're fucked basically, ain't you? Yeah. But if it don't kill you, you'll be alright.
Jackson getting cancer was kind of low.
Nah, not really.
No, it was a pretty funny time.
Yeah, it was just
initially
kind of funny for
it was Jackson's like, "I got cancer." You're like, "Oh, damn, you okay?" He was like, "Yeah, this," and then it just sort of was
became a joke
and was funny.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Hey, in any collaborative process where you have 11 people working together, you're gonna get some issues. There's gonna be some politics, but at the end of the day, we kind of all pulled through, and we kind of all accept that this is a difficult thing to try and achieve, especially when we have a crew as big as it is.
A week or two before Midwest Gaming Classic, the podcast I was on started to fall apart.
Yeah.
and Joel was on it with me at the time. There were 3 of us on there.
Yeah.
And the whole thing fell apart, and literally the day before my flight to Wisconsin, it was done.
Yeah.
It was over. And Joel and I he called me up and he said, well, what are we going to do?
You guys were in
"You know what?"
shock.
Yeah, we were. We were in shock. And we talked about it and said, you know what, maybe we could start our own thing, maybe we could do. I said, you know what, let's not worry about it. Let's just go to MGC, let's have fun. It's the weekend. You know, we're going to see everybody, we'll hang out, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. You know, maybe we'll come up with some ideas while we're there. Maybe we can talk to some people and see if anybody has ideas of, you know, what they think we should do.
Do you think that podcasts will continue to become more popular?
I hope so, because
Through the roof, yeah.
I think if you listen to mainstream radio, it's the death of music. So I would suggest to anybody, find out these brilliant podcasters that have got brilliant shows and support them and support live music. I think you've only got to look at the latest V Festival. It's the biggest pile of shite I've ever seen. I mean, how can you have Justin Bieber and Rihanna like headlining a British festival? Bullshit with a capital B.
In 5 years, I really see podcasting continuing to grow as a medium and becoming something that is a great part of every company and individual brand's content creation. Mobile has become so ubiquitous, and so podcasts are becoming increasingly popular with that. And we just launched our Podbean app for that very reason, trying to give users a more enhanced listening experience. We're going to see podcasts coming more and more to cars, I believe, as that technology evolves. And people are going to be wanting to listen more and more on demand. It's going to possibly take over a greater share from traditional radio and other means of entertainment and information.
Yeah, of course. I think podcasts will only grow and grow and grow. I think it's a medium that when we start to see podcasts very specifically moving into cars, you know, so natively built into a car's audio entertainment system, that's going to be huge. And I think people are already doing that. You've only got to look at some of the new manufacturers that are building them in. You've only got to look at what Apple is trying to do with CarKit. You know, it's going to grow and grow and grow when it's part of the native dashboard for someone. And more so, you've only got to look at people like Spotify, who, you know, at the time of recording this, have just announced that they're going to be supporting podcasts, which is massive. You know, that opens up 70 plus million users to people that want to consume this kind of content. It's huge. There's no way right now that it can stop growing. It just won't happen, because people like my mum, like my parents, they're starting to get tuned into this world of on-demand content, and podcasts fall squarely within that remit. So yeah, for me, podcasts, they're on the way up. They're only going to continue to grow. No question.
No, they're done. We're the last podcast.
Like the last Mohican. No, I imagine that they're on the rise. I mean, like we were saying before, they're becoming more and more popular. Like Duscher was saying, a lot more comedians are getting into it. So, like, I can imagine that, you know, the trajectory of them will probably rise and rise. This commercial radio these days there's still like talk show hosts, but it's mostly music. That's why you're listening to it, music and ads, and you don't get that with a...
Yeah, I think Serial, the podcast Serial, really helped push podcasting into more of a... what's the word I'm looking for?
Serious? Public? No, not public. That's not the right word.
Yeah, public sphere. So with that, also with one of the iOS updates where they made podcast its own little icon thing and people could access that was probably another big push to get people listening to content.
Yeah, I really do think podcasts will get more popular. How much more popular is difficult to say. It's difficult to predict anything like that. But what I will say is that the scope for doing stuff is really interesting. You know, where can they possibly go? Who's to say? But what I'm hoping will happen in the UK anyway, because America's kind of got it set in stone. I mean, as I say, that's part of their culture now, and you know, loads and loads of people have got podcasts, and loads of people are wanting to do podcasts, and have jumped on the bandwagon and realised the value and being able to connect with our fans at a real one-on-one level. You know, content straight to the audience, which is obviously the huge benefit, which is why, you know, Kickstarter and various other things has become popular, because it cuts out the middle person. I mean, there's ramifications for that, which is interesting, that not many people think about.
Only as much as everything's going to continue to become more popular. There are just more people getting online, more people becoming literate. Yes, that is the right word. In multimedia. I mean, when podcasts first came out, they were adopted by a younger group, and then obviously they spread. But, you know, still, my mum doesn't quite get them. She's 60 something. But you're only ever knocking that up, and so at some point the people that started are going to be the very top band, and the people below are still going to be there. Will podcasting itself continue to be the same percentage? Possibly not. It might step off. I mean, obviously the bandwidth's going to increase, so people are going to be able to use videos more often. They're going to be able to take it if that's what they want.
I think they're dwindling.
I don't think so.
I thought they were dwindling. Like, a lot of them were kind of falling off.
I don't think so. I think they're actually becoming even more popular, because you're seeing actually with cars now.
That's true.
Cars are integrating your phones and things right into the dash with their interface and the operating systems they have, so that you can easily get to your podcasts and things like that. And I think they're actually taking off. They're having a resurgence. I mean, you see things like the NPR one that Serial.
Which is
that
funny.
became like a phenomenon, like a national phenomenon.
I just listened to it and I didn't see what the whole thing was about it.
But that's one of those things. You'll see those things that pop up like that come into the national consciousness.
Yeah. I think, well, maybe I'm saying it wrong. I think the strong are surviving. And I think a lot of the other ones are kind of falling off. Or sometimes people just move on.
Or the hard-headed like us are surviving because we don't know when to quit.
8 listeners, yeah.
Because we just
Why
keep
would you
going.
guys quit?
But yeah, I think they're actually starting to thrive a little bit more at this point.
That's the thing. I mean, when you learn how to do it, it's so easy to do. It's it's not easy, but you don't need, you can if you have a computer, you can do it.
Yeah.
If you have a tablet, you can do it. You can edit on the tablet now.
They come to you in a way that is non-invasive to other things you could be doing. You can still drive, you can still cook, you can still do multiple other things while listening to a podcast that you can't do with video. So there's always going to be a place, and it's going to expand as the number of people listening.
Do you think podcasts need to change in order to remain relevant in the future?
I imagine that they'll... I mean, I don't know. They're already super niche. I don't even know if I can really imagine them, changing. Assume they will.
I guess bigger networks sort of thing.
That's true.
They'll either go broader and more niche at the same time. Like, not the same podcast, though. So you're going to get ones that are made for everyone and other podcasts that are made for just one person.
Yeah. They might ultimately, like if technology changes, like you're saying, satellite radio, they might replace conceivably commercial radio. Hey, it's a possibility. I don't know.
Yeah.
Stop looking at me.
Whatever the audience really wants, and I guess that's what I think. I think it's probably going to end up being a bit more money in it now.
I hope you don't. No, I hope you don't. I hope you just keep on keeping on, being creative. 2 fingers up to the establishment and bollocks to them, really.
And most of all,
beautiful people.
Most importantly, have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't take this serious.
And also, don't swear.
Yeah.
Done all right, didn't I?
Yeah.
By extension, I think topic and language are going to become a huge factor. I mean, obviously, people's priorities, people's interests are going to change as they get older. As a gamer, I'm still going to be interested in gaming, but I'm going to want other things brought into that. And if you're looking at something that you want to be extended into other markets, where English isn't necessarily the first language, but you feel there's a market there, you're going to need clearer conversation, maybe, clearer English. But the idea of what a podcast is, I don't necessarily think has to change. I think the thing that draws me back into the podcast that I really enjoy on a regular basis are that they're conversational, they're inclusive, they make me feel like I'm part of the room, part of the conversation. And sometimes I'll mutter to myself in disagreement if I'm hearing a conversation that I have a particularly strong opinion about. And I think that is what podcasts do incredibly well.
I don't think podcasts really have to change. They really are what they are, and because they are what they are, you're always going to find that audience.
And there's such a wide variety too. I mean, you can be one of those people that's looking for a 15-minute snippet 3 times a week, or you can look for something like us where we're 3 or 4 hours. I mean, there's a lot of topics and there's a lot of different ways to consume it, and yeah, I don't see what needs to change at all. Honestly, I mean, it's talk radio. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And talk radio's been around since radio, really. So yeah, I don't think it needs to change.
Yeah.
I think what podcasting is doing is making potentially regional radio less influential. Is that a bad thing? I mean, from my personal perspective, I don't like I like virtually no regional radio at all. I think it's pointless. And I think it just sort of fills a void for people going to work in mornings who need something to talk, something to listen to. I don't, I don't mind saying that. I just find it too generic, and they play the same 20 songs over and over again, and so I think what podcasting has done is, because what they've legitimately, podcasting has made radio stations do is transfer over to the internet to stream online. I don't think they ever would have really truly considered that as a viable form, because they preferred living in the archaic way of frequencies, which is much more expensive. But they're never really going to stop that, because obviously there's radio always still really in cars, and no one's ever going to have the new cars with. And obviously it's just part of our much more part of our culture than America is. I mean, obviously they have their own radio stations in America and all that kind of thing, but it's such a big country that it can pigeonhole in podcasting that has a worldwide audience that we can listen to.
Well, I think that's the beauty of podcasts, actually, that they will always be relevant, because there will always be someone putting out content that is timely and meaningful at any given point. I think because the medium is becoming adopted by so many more manufacturers, for example in cars, and the Spotify sort of revelation that they're going to be supporting podcasts in the future, I think if people have podcasts readily available, the content doesn't need to try and stay relevant. I think it will do that already, because it's driven by people's passions, what people love talking about, what people love listening to, and I think it will just naturally stay relevant. I think that's the beauty of the medium. You can very cost effectively, very cheaply produce high quality content that will appeal to a subsection of an audience pretty much constantly. So I don't think there's ever a worry about podcasting being relevant. I think someone will always want to listen to something. So I can't see that being a problem for podcasting. I think it will always be relevant.
You could probably use a new jacket, Zammit.
Thank you.
Have a sick one, Dave.
Illy.